And we are live from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, baby. Doing it on the road. Nick Brake setting the whole operation up. We're glad to have y'all here. It is Wednesday, April 10th, 2024, the last one on the face of the planet. We got a lot to jump into today, all right? We're here at Alabama. Going to talk to Kalen DeBoer a little bit later today. That conversation will be on tomorrow's show. Now, yesterday, we were also on the road in Knoxville, Tennessee. If you were keeping up on social media, got a little bit of the behind-the-scenes action, what we saw there and what we got to witness out there in Knoxville. Conversation with Josh Heupel on today's show. Okay, so we got a lot to jump into. The transfer portal, that whole thing is starting to buzz. You got a lot of intends to enter starting to break. Bear Alexander intends to enter. Dallin Hayden announced a couple of days ago he's intending to enter. What do we need to kind of get aligned on in terms of who's already on the board or going to be on the board when it comes to the transfer portal, and also maybe just some themes that we can get ahead of the curve on when it comes to how that whole thing is going to shake out. Also, like I just said, we were in Knoxville yesterday, got to see A1 Nico Iamaleava, and tell you what, he can sling it, but I want us to have a conversation together when it comes to kind of setting the table for him in 2024, because the expectations for this kid, man, they're through the roof. They've been through the roof since he was in high school. How should we assess him in 2024? Got some thoughts there. And like I just said, we're in Tuscaloosa, so we got to talk about the Tide. We're going to give you our formula for success for Jalen Milroe, because that's been a hot topic. We're going to ask Kalen DeBoer about that. And again, that will air on tomorrow's show. But there's been a lot made about the fit for Jalen Milroe in this offense, a lot made about Kalen DeBoer and his scheme and how Jalen Milroe's skill set is different than a Michael Penix Jr. or than a Jake Haener. I think there's a chance for this to be a really beautiful blend of Kalen DeBoer's style of offense and Jalen Milroe's ability. Also, Auburn just got themselves a nice little Nike deal. So we'll talk about that too. Glad to have you all a part of this. Make sure you're subscribed. We got a lot of content coming for you on this very channel, so make sure you're dialed in. Don't want y'all to miss a minute of it. Let's not waste any more time, baby. Let's get right to it. The transfer portal is already beginning to buzz. Now it officially opens this upcoming Tuesday, so make sure you're tuned into the show for some more breaking news on that when it starts happening in real time. We'll have Pete Nakos on the show. But there's already some names that are starting to hit you with the intends to enter kind of news. So some must-follows, obviously. The On3 main account on Twitter, the On3 transfer portal account on Twitter, Pete Nakos, Hayes Fawcett. If you want to be dialed in for all things portal, follow those accounts, all right? Bear Alexander was a name that broke yesterday that he is going to enter the transfer portal when that thing opens up. Now, Bear Alexander, for those of y'all that have kind of kept tabs on him throughout his college career, he started his career at Georgia, played a little bit as a true freshman there, went to USC last year via the portal, had some success, 48 tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss. Believe he had a sack and a half. Really good football player. The thing with Bear Alexander is there's a little bit of a risk-reward ratio you have to deal with when you bring him to your football team. And that's not me telling you he's a bad locker room guy or anything like that. But if Bear Alexander does indeed enter the transfer portal and does go to a school that's not USC, that will be his 7th school in 7 years. Now, I've never met Bear Alexander. We got to have him on our show this time last year, and he was phenomenal to talk to. However, 7 schools in 7 years doesn't exactly scream buy-in. But again, guy can play some football. So in the right situation, I think he could be a phenomenal get for any given team. A couple of teams that would make sense. I don't have any intel on this right now, but a couple of teams that make sense right now. Texas. I mean, if you're looking to be a contributing defensive lineman and play within a defense with some other ballers on it, and not have to take on 2 blockers at a time every single down, which is what he had to do a lot at USC. Texas could be a great spot for him. I think that could be a spot where you get to play against the best competition in the country in the SEC, and like I just said, have some other focus on other guys within the defense. Also, Florida State now. How many times have we seen guys with a lot of potential that haven't been able to totally put it together just yet go to Florida State and have success? I'm just saying, if there's a place that is going to work at as a transfer player, you find out really quick that it works if you go to Florida State. Now, we pay attention to the social media pulse when it comes to what this show is about. Like, we understand that there's official reports out there, and social media does not necessarily qualify as an official report, but we did see Bear Alexander last night tweet out a snippet of Deion Sanders talking about how just was basically talking about something inspirational. But what I want to make sure we hone in on there is Bear Alexander tweeting a snippet from a coach who specializes in the portal, a coach who I'm sure would love to have a big defensive lineman like Bear Alexander. So keep an eye on Colorado. That could also make sense. Again, nothing intel specific there, but just some schools that we could see maybe making sense for a one Bear Alexander. Big name that broke yesterday for and intends to enter was Oregon State running back Damian Martinez. Now, Pete Thamel also sprinkled on there intel-wise that Damian Martinez was set to make right around $400,000 at Oregon State. So, in terms of what kind of player you're getting if you sign a Damian Martinez via the portal, over 1,100 yards last year, 9 touchdowns. This is a RB1 kind of player that's available right now. And I think the way that it looks on the outside is this is a guy who probably wanted to help his draft stock. And this is not to dunk on Oregon State, but you look at the schedule they're playing and you look at the just overall talent you're surrounded by on that roster. If you're Damian Martinez, it would make sense to go somewhere else and try and improve your NFL prospects somewhere else. More power to him. Now, again, no intel as of right now. Stay tuned in here if you want to have some specific intel when we get Pete Nakos on the show next week. I'll just say this. Tennessee, I believe, is probably going to be in that running back transfer portal market for the right guy. You could do a lot worse than a Damian Martinez. That's not an official prediction. I'm just saying if you're looking for a fit, play in the SEC, help your draft stock, play in a fun offense that goes up-tempo. Tennessee needs another back. I'll just say that. Or I expect them to maybe go and add a back through the portal. They got a great back in Dylan Sampson. We got to see him yesterday. Miami Edge, Nigelique Kelly is going to enter the transfer portal. Another intends to enter guy. This is a top 100 recruit from 2022. And whenever we would talk to the folks at Kane Sport from the fall camp rumblings or spring ball rumblings or whatever it was during that time of the year, Nigelique Kelly was a name that kept coming up of like, hey, this is a guy with a lot of upside. This is a guy with a lot of ability. Hey, if he can put it together, if the coaching staff can get him in position to be successful, this is a dude who have a really good season. Did decent at Miami, had 19 tackles, 4 sacks in 2 years. That 4 sacks number isn't bad by any stretch of the imagination. The key thing with him is there's upside, all right? There's a lot to be excited about. Got a big frame, 6'6". The fact that he's at an ACC school in Miami means that he could do the whole post-spring deal and go to an SEC school. I don't know if that's someone who will be in the market for him, but that could be a spot to watch. He's from SEC country, played his high school ball in the state of Florida. A name that broke a while ago that we haven't got a chance to talk about yet together is Dallin Hayden. He's the Ohio State running back. And I'm very curious to see what the market is for Dallin Hayden. It was reported that Tennessee won't be in the market for him. His dad played at Tennessee, so that was a little bit of an eyebrow raiser. Dallin Hayden has had some successful games at Ohio State, like played in relief in 2022 of some of the backs they had dinged up and did really awesome. He had multiple 100-yard games, had 146 yards against Maryland, had 102 against Purdue. I understand those aren't like world beater kind of defenses, but still, I believe in that year he was a true freshman. So it's a stacked running back room. It makes sense why you would look to play somewhere else if you're Dallin Hayden. You got Quinshawn Judkins in there now from Ole Miss. You got Travion Henderson when he's healthy. Probably not going to see a massive dose of the football, but it is what it is. Dallin Hayden, I think, could help your football team. I'll leave it at that. Now, when it comes to some trends to watch in the transfer portal, what I'm hearing is linebacker is going to be a hot commodity. A lot of teams looking for a linebacker. And so whenever you're a hot commodity, demand goes up. Guess what else goes up? Price point. Kind of what we saw with offensive linemen really throughout the transfer portal's existence. Probably still see a good demand for linemen, but linebackers, it sounds like, is going to be a prized item when it comes to the transfer portal. Now, here's something to watch for. I talked to Pete Nakos about this, and we kind of had an agreement here. I think a lot of guys that haven't yet played their spring game may play their spring game and then hit the portal. So this portal's open for 2 weeks. Don't be surprised if you see some names pop up there closer to the cutoff date before guys can enter their name in there. Why? Because you have a nationally televised spring game for a lot of these cats, or at least have a spring game that coaches can access, do great things, put up some great highlights, get coaches' attention, and then be able to have a better market for yourself having done well in the spring game. So that's kind of the latest intel right now, kind of the latest buzz around the transfer portal. Again, when this thing opens on our live show on Tuesday, we will have Mr. Portal himself, Pete Nakos, joining the show, And if we're lucky, we'll have some breaking news that Pete can riff on, and we'll have a good time. And that's definitely going to want to be something that you are dialed in for. So make sure you're subscribed to catch all of that. But the portal, man, proving yet again it is absolutely ruthless. Absolutely ruthless. Hey, so glad to have y'all here, man. We got a lot to get to here in just a matter of moments. Josh Heupel going to join the show. Again, we were in Knoxville yesterday, at Alabama today, talking to Kalen DeBoer. That conversation is on tomorrow's show. So make sure you're tuned in for that. Right now, though, I want us to talk about the most impactful games of 2024. And most impactful games to the college football playoff, sure, because whoever wins their conference more than likely is going to have a college football playoff, a pretty nice seeding, if you will. But I want us to be a little bit more in the weeds in the sense of I want to talk about the most impactful conference games. I got 4 of these, one for each conference. Rest in peace to the Pac-12. What are the games that are going to decide the conference title races? Let's start in the Big Ten, man. October 12th, you got Ohio State going out to Autzen. Going to go see the Ducks in Eugene. There's a very real chance here that both of these teams are undefeated when they play, and neither one of them has a cupcake schedule after they play the other. Like Oregon after Ohio State, they go to Michigan, they go to Wisconsin, Ohio State, they're at Penn State, and they play Michigan, obviously, to end the year. I'll say this. I think whoever wins the Big Ten will do so with not more than one loss. Okay, so either team that, again, assuming they're undefeated, the loser of this game, I believe, loses their mulligan and has a pretty steep climb the rest of the way. I also think both these teams, man, when you look at them at a macro level, from a roster perspective and from who they have at a head coach level, like they have the tools to make a national title run. So this game, quite frankly, could be a little preview of a rematch we get in Indy with both these teams for the Big Ten title. But nonetheless, that one I think is going to decide, or at least have a very large impact on who ends up having the inside track there in the Big Ten Conference. We're in SEC country. Let's go talk about the SEC. You could very easily have a conversation around Alabama, Georgia. The reason why that's not the game for me here is because that one's played a little bit earlier in the year. Let's go to the weekend after the one that we just talked about, from October 12th when Ohio State and Oregon play to October 19th when Georgia and Texas play. Georgia goes to Austin. So if you're keeping track now, these 2 different games we've talked about, both in the Big Ten and SEC respectively, I think the newcomers will have a massive impact on who ends up playing in that conference title game. But Georgia goes to Austin. This gets really interesting if both of these teams show up in this game with 1 loss. Because if you have 2 losses in the SEC before November, things get a little bit more dicey. Might need a little bit of help to make that conference title game in Atlanta. Again, no more divisions, so you could definitely see this be a rematch in Atlanta as well. But Georgia, when they play Texas, will have already played Alabama, and they have to play Tennessee as well after this game. Also, they play Florida, and that's a huge toss-up game. Not toss-up game, because I'm sure Georgia will be very heavily favored, but I'm just saying in a rivalry game like that at a neutral site, I wouldn't put it in Sharpie. Maybe put it in pencil. I wouldn't put it in a Sharpie as a win if you're a Georgia fan. Now, Texas, the tricky part for them is they play Georgia the week after they play Red River. And Red River, man, we've seen it many times. The winner of that game will turn around the next week after absolutely draining themselves emotionally and physically, and then kind of have a letdown spot. You can't have that if you're Texas. I don't think Oklahoma will be an easy game by any stretch of the imagination. It does not get any easier because you play a team who's, been the big dog more or less, or been a big dog in the SEC over the course of the last couple of years. Don't expect that to change in 2024. So Texas will definitely have their work cut out for them. Excited to watch that one. So 3 weeks in a row now, we have 3 games that will help determine the conference title race. So have a very big impact on the conference title race. We go from the Big Ten to the SEC, from the 12th, the 19th of October, the 26th of October. I think we start to see the ACC kind of take shape for us a little bit. Florida State goes to Miami. Now, obviously, this has massive implications on the recruiting pitches you can make in different living rooms after this game is played. I think there's a very real chance now, depending on how that game goes week 1 for Miami, when they go to Florida, we could see both these teams undefeated or potentially with 1 loss. Winner will obviously have an inside track here if this game ends up being a undefeated versus a 1 loss, or undefeated. Miami, if they win this game, and they have one loss or less coming out of it, heading into it, they play Duke, at Georgia Tech, Wake, and they're at Syracuse. Okay, so I'm not saying those are all just easy wins, but I am saying that's kind of the downhill feel for Miami if they are going to come out of this game with one loss or less. Florida State, they have a battle after they play Miami. So they play at Notre Dame. They got to play Florida at the end of the year. Like it's not going to be an easy, downhill, jump right into it, kind of keep sledding towards the conference title game if you beat a Miami. So all I'm saying here is Florida State, you can't afford to lose a mulligan. In Miami, this is probably the last hurdle you have to find your way in that conference title game. And obviously both of those would. Now the Big 12, man, or both of those teams would. The Big 12, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be wild. Like I couldn't put it in just a one game sample size for us here in terms of the most impactful game, because I think it's going to be absolute demolition derby style, to be honest with you, in that conference. You add in a Utah, you add in a Colorado and Arizona. Like there's some newcomers to this conference. But when you look at the last 2 weeks of this season, I think that you're going to have a lot of answers from Iowa State, because they play at Utah, and then they turn around the next week, and Kansas State comes to town. So I'm not saying Iowa State's going to be in that Big 12 title game, but I do think Utah and Kansas State have a very good chance going into those last 2 weeks of the season to make it to Jerry World and play in that one. And, I mean, I'm just looking at the makeup of this game, man. Like, Iowa State brings back top 20 returning production in 2024. I think Utah and Kansas State are probably going to be the betting favorites. I believe they are the betting favorites right now to win the conference. Iowa State has a chance to either play spoiler, or who knows, they could have a chance to find their way to Jerry World themselves. Kansas State's the curious one because they play the last game of the regular season in Ames, Iowa. And Kansas State doesn't have that same returning production that a Utah has, that a Iowa State has, but I think they have the highest ceiling. So I got not one, but two high-impact games for the Big 12 Conference, Iowa State at Utah and Kansas State at Iowa State. Any way you slice it, the Cyclones are going to have their mark on who ends up there in Dallas, in my humble opinion. To close that thought on the Big 12, I don't think we see a Big 12 champ with less than 2 losses. So it's going to be, I think, absolute anarchy in that conference. But regardless, October's a big month, if you ask me, for those conference title races to start to take shape. All right. We sat down with Josh Heupel yesterday, and it was a phenomenal conversation. Josh Heupel might as well be the co-host for the Hard Count now, because this is the second time we've had him on this offseason. Great conversation. Got to go watch spring practice, asked him about that, asked him about Nico, asked him about what he wants to do post-spring in the transfer portal. So awesome conversation in person with Josh Heupel. Without further ado, here's the head ball coach for the Vols. We are now joined by the head coach of Tennessee Vols here in Knoxville. We're doing an away game at his place, Coach Josh Heupel. Coach, how fun is this for you to be the head coach here? Because we were just out at practice, high energy, guys are flying around, emotions are an all-time high. Are you having a blast right now, coaching this team?
Absolutely. This group of guys, just how they've attacked and competed every day. It's a great group to be around. It's really been that way since we got back in January. It's been fun to see our leadership take a real hold inside of the locker room, obviously out on the practice field as well. But the connection of our staff and our players, it's a joy to come in here every single day.
When you took this job right around 4 years ago, what would you tell that guy knowing what you know now?
And there's so many things that have changed within the landscape of football that I'm not sure anybody knew were coming at the time that I chose to come here. But, through all the adversity, when you first get your feet on the ground, just the fan base, the passion, the energy that's created here in Knoxville, across the state, and Vol Nation, across the country. The staff that we have, it's just been so much fun. There's been a lot of growth. I've gotten better. My players and our staff have helped me grow as a head coach, and we've continued to grow as a program. Excited to continue to build towards kickoff this fall.
Coach, you talk about that growth. A lot of coaches talk about internal standards and culture and a way of doing things. Everybody has a different version of those. How would you define that for you and this team at Tennessee?
Yeah, for us, it's built on accountability, trust, which happens through being real and transparent in our communication, respecting the people in the process, and competing extremely hard every single day. And we got a group of individuals, men and women, on our staff and this football team that love being around each other. these hours are long inside of college football, but we really do enjoy the interactions that we get a chance to have every single day. And there's nothing better than when our players come in here. It's been a lot of fun.
Because you mentioned those players, like we hear a lot about, hey, coaches led, player fed, and things like that, and how much of an impact it is to have your players really policing the culture. What's been your satisfaction level with this team this far on that front?
Well, I think just in general, the sense of accountability of doing the right things, that's in the building. It's, out in the community. It's in the classroom. Young men that are growing into grown men by the time they finish. On the leadership side of it, just a really strong group of guys, some that have been here since I arrived, some that have been new over the last 12 months. How they have gotten our new guys, freshmen, transfers, within the fabric of our program, understanding what it means to be a Vol every single day. And they do it in a way where the other guys receive the information really well. And they've continued to grow in their ability to step out in front and command and lead.
The finale for the spring coming up here this weekend. I mean, the big spring game. What has been your satisfaction level with this spring as opposed to maybe your expectations when this thing started out?
Well, I think, and I was even talking with a couple of our young guys, our new guys a day ago. I had a meeting with all those guys here as we were getting ready for the last week of spring ball. Just, for them to flash back to when they first started, it could be a first day of a tackle period, whatever it might be, and the fundamentals that they've grown in the understanding of what we do and in our schemes in all three phases of the game. I've been really proud of that. We got to go finish this week the right way. But these guys, they really have. They've brought great energy, great purpose, great focus to the practice field every single day. And that's why we've taken strides throughout the course of spring ball. We haven't had a day where we dipped. These guys have come and competed every day.
Coach, you mentioned some of those new faces, Mike Matthews, Boo Carter, Brazel. I mean, what's been your impression of a lot of those new guys and how they've acclimated to this point, like you were speaking to?
It starts with them in January. Those guys have been super mature in the way that they've conducted themselves. That's the transfers and the high school guys. They've adjusted to college life and college football extremely well. And they're highly talented. They make plays. They reset from play to play. They take coaching extremely well. And a lot of those guys are going to be able to make a huge impact when we get to next fall.
And Coach Nico Iamaleava is obviously going to be the talking point for everybody that gets to hold a microphone like me. We're going to talk about that until we start playing games. The first question, does the whole team have his last name down, or is he just Nico? Is he A? Like, do we have a consensus across the board yet?
I would say 75% of our team has his last name down. We'll get to 100% by the time we get to kickoff. I was really impressed with your ability to pronounce it the right way.
I appreciate that.
But it's been fun just with him at the quarterback position, how he's grown this offseason, just being a pro in the building up here all day. He's got great focus. He's continued to grow fundamentally, a lot better grasp of what we're doing and the why behind what we're doing and understanding the things he's going to see on the other side of the football.
I mean, 75% is pretty good. Yeah. I mean, this far out till week one, that's pretty solid.
Yeah, we got to get everybody in Vol Nation pronouncing it right by kickoff too.
There we go. Well, Coach, with how highly touted he came in, everyone sees the 5 stars next to his name, and they're like, he should play right away. Like everyone's clamoring for him to play early. How massive was that redshirt year for him to get to sit behind a Joe Milton and have a year to acclimate to college life and college football, period?
Well, at the end of the day, it's big for him. But I think the best thing about Nico is from the time that he's got here, he's understood that he has to grow as a player, and that's fundamentally an understanding of the game. His tutelage under Joe last year, those guys have a great relationship, and it really started with the relationship that Hendon and Joe had, where those guys sharpen each other and compete with each other, but they help each other. And Hendon and Joe were just back here last week and still spend time with Nico in our quarterback group. They have great pride in that room. But Nico's ability to grow in his preparation throughout the course of the season is why he played well in the bowl game. We'll serve him well as we get into this fall as well.
Yeah, Coach, it was fun to watch him slinging around today. On the defensive side of the ball, kept seeing 27 making a lot of plays and wreaking havoc. And so I'm just speculating here. Going to be a lot of, hey, check, slide to 27. A lot of extra attention for him. Is there a plan in place to try and isolate him on the defense, or a plan in place to maybe still get after the quarterback when they do give extra attention to him?
Yeah, he got extra attention certainly by the midpoint of last year too. And, Coach Banks does an unbelievable job with the ability to move him around and try to force offensive line to communicate, understand where he's not just going to be in one spot the entire football game. But for James, his consistent growth here during the course of spring ball, continuing to grow in his fundamentals, being able to play down in and down out. It's also why it's important that you grow guys around him. And James understands that. But our defensive line group, we got a lot of depth and experience on the inside. Our edges continue to get better. Really excited about what our guys have done up front on the defense side of the ball this spring.
When it comes to that transfer portal second window here that we're going to hit in a matter of days, is there a plan in place for how y'all are going to attack that? Because the other side of it is, the cultural side that I'm sure y'all are considering, and then also how y'all operate offensively, adding pieces, getting to play in a Ferrari kind of offense like that. I'm sure it's not easy having missed spring practice. Is there a thought process there for y'all?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you always try to upgrade your roster. The guys that we have here, we love. The culture piece is real, and so you're trying to balance all those things to put your roster in the best spot to go be your best next fall.
Awesome. Well, Coach, last question for you here. We appreciate all your time. What is the number one thing we're looking to get done here at the spring game this Saturday?
I want to see young guys go out and compete in front of our fan base, be able to play and execute down in and down out, reset from from one play to the next. And it's their first, opportunity to play in our stadium with some fans in the stands.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there will be no shortage of fans when it comes to Neal this Saturday. But Coach, we appreciate your time, and thanks for allowing us to come check y'all out this fall.
I appreciate it. Go Big Orange.
Appreciate it, Coach. We appreciate all the folks at Tennessee having us out yesterday. Got to watch practice. We're going to unpack our visit to Tennessee a little bit more in depth on the Thursday show. Just kind of felt inappropriate to do that as we're sitting in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, to tell you about another visit we took. So we'll do that tomorrow. What I do want us to talk about right now is setting the table for Nico Iamaleava in 2024. Because the guy came out of high school and probably was even in high school with so much hype and so much juice, and then going to a rabid fan base that is Tennessee only amplifies all those things. We got to see him in person yesterday, and was really interesting to get to watch him actually throw the football in a practice setting and get to kind of talk to some folks that are close to that program and get kind of a pulse for where things stand right now for Nico and kind of a gauge for 2024. So before we get to that, make sure you're subscribed right now. We appreciate y'all being dialed in. It is because of y'all that we are currently sitting on the road in a college football athletic complex. All right, that is because of y'all. So we appreciate y'all allowing us to do that. If you like stuff like this, if you're a diehard junkie for this sport like we are, make sure you're subscribed. So thank you in advance for getting that done. Thank you for getting us to Knoxville yesterday. So with Nico Iamaleava, what he did in that Citrus Bowl was nothing short of electrifying, right? Because Joe Milton's sitting out. It's the first time to see the number one recruit from the class of 2023, see what he's going to do. It's first peek at the future. He goes out and does awesome. Runs for a couple of touchdowns. Looks like he's running the offense really effectively. They beat a really good Iowa team. And even though Iowa was anemic offensively all year, it's still a really good defense to put up points against. With that being said, I want us to still take a breath, slow ourselves down a little bit, and understand that we need to hold our opinion of Nico Iamaleava really loosely. We were so close to getting the whole show without stumbling over his name. We need to hold our opinion with him very loosely, because as much hype as he comes in with, as much as we expect him to be awesome at Tennessee long-term, understand now he hasn't played a game yet in the SEC. And what I want to get out ahead of is if they go to Norman and he has a little bit of some freshman struggles in a road game in a big-time environment and throws 2 picks, going to be a lot of people that come out of the woodworks and say, I told you he wasn't any good, told you he was overhyped, told you he was this, told you he was that. And it's like, we can't define a kid in his career and how he's going to be as a quarterback in September of his first year being the starting quarterback. Okay, so let's give it some time. Let's allow our opinion of him to evolve. You think he's going to be awesome? Great. Believe that, but understand that it's not a linear path to success for Nico. There's probably going to be some growing pains, as there is with every great quarterback. Peyton Manning's first year in the NFL, I think he still holds the record for most interceptions by a rookie ever. Imagine writing off Peyton Manning. All right, so I'm not saying Nico's going to be Peyton Manning. I'm just saying don't be surprised if it's a gradual success to being as good as he's going to be. I'm not saying he's going to struggle. I'm just saying give it time is kind of the key point I want to make there. Because even in that bowl game, they feel like there were some reads that he missed, some things that he could have improved on, some things that he probably could have crossed his T's and dotted his I's on. So give it some time. The thing that I'm most encouraged by when it comes to the makeup of who Nico is what he has between the ears. All right. This is a guy who very easily, in the day and age of social media and visibility of athletes, he could take all of that, wrap his arms around it, and just amplify his own image, amplify that hype, and feed into it. He hasn't done any of that. In fact, talking to folks yesterday at Tennessee, they told me that he's actually done his best to downplay all that. He's not trying to jump at every single opportunity to be in front of a camera and tweet something out and juice his own NIL valuation, whatever it may be. Like, Nico is very happy to just let it all come to him, play the long game, and focus on the main thing, which is, of course, football. We got to see him yesterday, and truth be told, there were several periods of team where Nico was, getting a few plays here or there, but for the most part, I think they wanted to kind of allow some other guys to get work as well during the spring, which is not uncommon across college football. You try and assess your depth. But when Nico wasn't in the drills yesterday, when he wasn't in during 11-11 setting in certain situations, I saw him take mental reps during the play. Now, mental reps kind of sounds like a cliche term, like, oh, okay, you're running through the play in your head. No, Nico was actually legitimately standing somewhere around 15 yards behind the play, going through his progression and making what he would have thrown, kind of shadowing that of the quarterback in play. So he's not getting a rep physically, but he was getting a rep walking it through, which it's set. And you're just not like, hey, everybody should do that, right? Every good quarterback worth their salt should do something like that, right? Yeah, they should, but not everybody does it because it's not fun. They're actually in the game. It's a lot more fun to chop it up with your teammates on the sideline and squirt Gatorade around at your pals and just, enjoy being the starting quarterback. He was getting work while he was at work. All right. And I think that's important because only guys that love football do things like that. I know it sounds like I'm blowing this out of proportion. Promise you I'm not. Played with guys that do what Nico did yesterday and care about the game when they're not in, and played with guys that do the latter, what I just mentioned, and kind of goof off when they're not in. And I tell you what, I'd much rather play with the guys that take mental reps. Couple of things I think that are really going to bode well for Nico, in addition to what I just said with how seriously he's taken the game and just what he's got from a emotional standpoint, how mature he is. The quality and the quantity of wide receiver play that Tennessee has this year, I believe, is going to be superior to what they had last year, because Joe Milton had a very difficult situation he walked into, in the sense that expectations for him were also sky high because they're coming off the year where Hendon Hooker really should have been a Heisman finalist, and everyone's expecting it to be copy and paste, plug and play. Offense should score 40 a game yet again, right? And some of that, I think, Joe Milton probably has his fair share of blame in that. Like, if you're the quarterback, obviously you have a pretty large say in what happens with the offense. But at the exact same time, Tennessee lost Brew McCoy to injury pretty early on in the year. Didn't have the Biletnikoff Award winner in Jalen Hyatt out there. He was gone to the league. And so the quantity of weapons that Joe Milton was able to throw to, you had Squirrel White, who's great, but like, if a defense is only really worried about one guy hurting them through the air, makes it a lot more easy to defend. What I saw yesterday at practice for Tennessee, and again, we'll talk more about this tomorrow on the live show, I think that Tennessee has somewhere in the range of 4 wide receivers that could start most places in the SEC. So the reason why that's crucial, Nico's going to have a couple of different options, I think, any given play to get the ball to guys in space and make something happen. It's not going to be hey, I hope Squirrel White's open, because if he's not, the next guy's got to win his matchup. They got a lot of matchup winners, I think, at Tennessee, which should be encouraging. Now, watching Nico yesterday, one of the things that stuck out to me the most physically about him, one, he looks a lot more put together than I think he was a season ago. I don't know if that's the fact. I don't know if he weighs more, but I think he looked pretty well put together. Winter conditioning was good to him, it looks like. His ability to throw on the run, I think, gets massively overlooked, because we saw what he did in the bowl game, and he did great with his legs in terms of picking something up when the play broke down, and the RPO game, and that's huge, right? Defenses are going to have to honor that. But the way that he is just effortlessly able to get his hips around, moving sideline to sideline, and still deliver the ball with great velocity and quite honestly, great accuracy, that is a game changer. Because, again, going back to Joe Milton, not all of it was on him, but last year he did not have a elite ability to escape the rush. Now, Nico, with what he brings athletically and physically, being able to turn plays that maybe would have been negative a year ago into positives, being able to hit reset on a play that the defense would have otherwise won. You break, contain, new play. We're playing schoolyard scramble kind of football. That's massive. That's massive, and I think that's going to pay enormous dividends for Tennessee when it comes to their offensive production in 2024. Last thing I'll say here, there's new technology this year in college football. Everyone's talking about the radios and the helmets, and I don't think Tennessee will be one of those teams that leans super heavily into this technology, just by nature of our last conversation with Josh Heupel saying, I didn't really want a guy talking to me in my ear 15 seconds before the snap. But I still think it's fair to acknowledge having a Heisman Trophy runner-up quarterback on the walkie-talkie in your ear while you're out there in a tough environment if you're on the road in the SEC and you're Nico, your first year being the guy. I don't think that hurts anything. All right? I don't think that hurts anything. And it'd be different if Josh Heupel hadn't played the position he has, and he's done it at a really high level. And so I think that's going to be, at least early on in the season for Nico, to be able to have someone, kind of calm him down before the snap in terms of getting his eyes correct, knowing what he's looking at. Heupel's able to tell him, hey, this coverage, they're disguising this. It looks like man is actually zone. Things like that. I don't know if it'll be the end-all be-all for them, but I do think it's at least worth mentioning here as Nico gets up to speed and becomes the guy at Tennessee. So all the reason for excitement with him is there. All the expectations for him, they're valid. He's got the physical tools. I love his emotional makeup. I love the way that he carries himself as a football player. Give it some time, but he's got a chance to be really, really good. They're trying to kind of, I think, keep a low profile, and I understand that. But when you are Nico Iamaleava and you have all the buzz that he had out of high school and you did what you did in the bowl game, like, people are going to be excited. So more power to him. More power to him. All right, speaking of quarterbacks in the SEC, man, we are so fortunate, so blessed to currently be in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, talking to Kalen DeBoer in, I guess, a matter of 45 minutes. As soon as we get off the air here, we're going to talk to Coach. And again, that conversation will be on tomorrow's live show. So if you're in the podcast feed, subscribe to the podcast feed, rate, review, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff if you're on YouTube. But Jalen Milroe, I think, in 2024 is a fascinating case study with this Kalen DeBoer offense. Because as they enter into this new era of Alabama football, there's a lot of questions as to, hey, how is this going to work? Because like Alabama last year, they threw the ball right around 23 times a game. Kalen DeBoer, historically, the last 2 seasons, throwing the ball 40 times a game, give or take, is the average for him. Is this going to work? How are we going to blend this together? Well, I think it's going to work really, really well. I think there is a chance for these skill sets to blend, but I think there's a formula for success here that we should at least acknowledge for Jalen Milroe, because I'll say this too. I think he should be your guy at quarterback. Is he the best in a combine setting? If you're out there in, shorts and a T-shirt and you're throwing routes on air, is he going to look the best? I don't know. And I'm not saying no. I'm just saying I don't know. I know Austin Mack probably has a cannon. I know Ty Simpson has a cannon. But Jalen Milroe has proven, I think, he is a winner. He's a football player, and guys follow him. So for him to be successful in 2024 in this new scheme, the key word here, and a word that Kalen DeBoer has used to describe Jalen Milroe through spring thus far, is consistency. Because as much as Michael Penix Jr. made plays down the field last year, and as good as Washington's offensive line was, they did a really good job giving him really quick access throws, getting the ball out of his hands like in less than a second and a half, 2 seconds. It was usually catch the ball, 1-step drop, ball's out. Catch the ball, 3 steps, ball's out on time. And so as much as they pushed the ball downfield, a lot of what Washington did was get the ball to playmakers in space and allow them to set up in 2nd and 3, allow them to have a lot of 3rd and 1. Like the offense at Washington built on itself because their quarterback play was precise, it was controlled, and it was consistent. Jalen Milroe last year didn't bring a ton of that to the table, but I think in 2024, with this new offensive scheme, he has a chance now to have some more situations set up for success throwing the football, if that makes sense. Now, the subplot within that, anytime you get the ball to your playmakers in space, playmakers got to be playmakers, right? I mean, you got to go and pick up 6 yards when you throw you a bubble screen. We got to make sure that giving you the ball on an extended handoff to the sideline, we throw those bubbles, we throw those screens, you got to make it happen too. So Kobe Prentice, we're obviously going to watch him closely. Bernard going to watch him closely, the transfer from Washington. That's going to be a very key part of this whole thing, because as much as, and I keep saying this now, Washington threw the ball deep last year, but a lot of what they did was building off of that intermediate game, getting their quarterback comfortable, getting him in rhythm, and then allowing him to have a one-on-one shot down the sideline. And Michael Penix Jr., of course, pretty much placed the football wherever he wanted to. But that's kind of the thing that we got to look at here too. Jalen Milroe, from what I saw last year, pushed the ball downfield really effectively. Like, I don't think a lot of Alabama fans are sitting here saying Jalen Milroe can't throw the deep ball, because I saw him do that a lot last year. The question mark was always, how are we in the intermediate game? And so if he's consistent in the intermediate game and consistent in the quick game, that's going to open up deep plays downfield. That's going to make those safeties be a little bit more quick to trigger on the bubble. And then we got someone deep down the field, and Jalen Milroe will put it on the money. That's kind of the secret ingredient here. So if they're able to keep defenses off balance that way, you get them flowing sideline to sideline. The blend here comes with what you can do in space as an athlete if you're Jalen Milroe. Because we've talked a lot about the development of the Alabama offensive line, and they're sort of trending towards a more aerodynamic structure as an offensive line. The guys are cutting weight to be faster and to be able to go out and get out in space and kick out an outside linebacker and block better on the screens. That's also going to factor in, I believe, in the quarterback design run game. What do we know about Kalen DeBoer? We know he is arguably one of the best offensive minds in college football. I was going to say the best. He's probably up there with Steve Sarkisian, probably up there with Mike Norvell. Like, he's right now one of the best in the game. You can have a real conversation about him being the best offensive mind. What do great offensive minds utilize? They're Jimmys and Joes. And so, yes, it'll be, I think, a Kalen DeBoer scheme offensively. They're still going to, I think, stick to what has brought him to this Alabama job. But we understand, man, like, he's going to use his ingredients. He is going to utilize Jalen Milroe's legs. And who's to say that with the success that they're going to have, I think, spreading defenses out, who's to say we don't see Jalen Milroe have even more success running the football, have more success in the design quarterback run game? So we're speculating a little bit here, but all in all, man, I think there's a blend here between Kalen DeBoer's scheme, wanting to throw the football more, and Jalen Milroe's athleticism. People see it as oil and water, and people see it as a question mark of how's that going to fit. I'm being honest here. I have the same questions, but at the exact same time, when you look at it, it might be one of those situations where two things that don't look like they should go together and work seamlessly actually do. So I'm excited to watch it. I think it's going to be a real good time. And again, I think Kalen DeBoer is not going to try and fight the skill set that Jalen Milroe has. I think the opposite will happen, and it'll be beautiful music to watch offensively. Now, I want to speak kind of softly here for this next segment because I don't want us to get in trouble. Again, we're in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Going to talk about the Auburn Tigers. All right, just a quick note here about Auburn. They landed a Nike deal yesterday. It broke, at least. They landed the Nike deal. That's worth 10 years, starting in 2025. And I want us to just have a quick conversation about this, because for Auburn to land a deal from Nike, yes, it's going to look cool. We're going to get awesome uniforms. It's going to be exciting for us as fans to watch. I'm sure the folks at Auburn are fired up to go to the student store and pick up some new swag. But I think there's a larger ripple effect at play here. The first is John Cohen, the AD at Auburn, going and landing this Nike deal, is very obviously pushing to be elite in all areas. In all areas. Because when we visited Auburn, again, I'm speaking softly here, we're in Tuscaloosa. When we visited Auburn, every single facet of that operation, from the time you walked into the new building to talking to the staff to seeing how they ran practice, it felt big time. And not to say anything of Under Armour, but you pair that big time feel with the most recognizable apparel brand in the world. I think that matters. I think there's going to be success to be had there when you look at Auburn football long term. Also, on the recruiting side of things, if I'm a potential 4 or 5-star cat, I want to play in the NFL. More likely than not, I have aspirations to sign a nice apparel deal as well. Talking to folks close to Auburn, there's already been some buzz among recruits that, okay, if I go to Auburn, maybe I help myself land a Nike deal once I finish up playing there. Like, I'm just saying, landing the most recognizable sports apparel deal with a big-time brand at Auburn, that matters. And I think there's an impact to be had there long term. Also, this is the last thing I want to say here. I just have a question about this. I wonder if seeing the arrow pointing up And seeing Auburn go and land a big-time Nike deal doesn't inspire a little bit more excitement among the folks that were previously on the fence of donating some resources to Auburn. Now, Auburn's Auburn, all right? So I'm not saying that they're hurting for anything. They're well-resourced. From what I understand, they're playing ball in the NIL era. They just, had a $92 million facility open up. Like, they're doing okay on the dollars and cents side of things. But you're never going to say no to more money, right? Never going to say no to more money. And if I'm an Auburn potential booster and I see this deal happen, I feel confident about providing more resources because I know that we're headed a certain direction. Hiring Hugh Freeze, I think it's a great move. I think you're going to see it pay dividends on the field. You go out and you land a big-time AD in John Cohen. Okay, we're moving. You go out and land a big-time Nike deal. Everything about Auburn, from where I'm sitting, is beginning to trend upward. And so this could kind of be that extra ingredient you sprinkle on there that causes some folks to open up the pocketbook and give some more resources. So just wanted to touch base on that. Maybe we'll do that again on a future show, but I think Auburn and that Nike deal is something to at least consider long-term and the ripple effect there. But with that being said, man, glad to have y'all a part of this. Grateful for all y'all that are tuned in right now. Grateful for y'all that have allowed us to take this show on Tennessee yesterday, Alabama today, talking to Coach Kalen DeBoer here the next, give or take 30 minutes. That conversation, one more time, is on tomorrow's live show. So make sure you're dialed in. Make sure you're subscribed on your way out of here. Hey, we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.